that was really the seed of why I wrote that open letter, on Padmaavat.
Yeah.
So I do feel that, you can't pretend, you can't be tone deaf to your context. I know this because of my involvement in Raanjhanaa. And I know that the team of Raanjhanaa had no intention whatsoever of glorifying stalking. While we were shooting Raanjhanaa, Nirbhaya Case had happened. I remember this so vividly. We were in Banaras when that had happened. And the film released in June, I think. And in those 6 months, discourse in India had changed because of the Nirbhaya case. In India, the fact that, feminism has led to higher divorce rates. Well, the only difference is that women who are now unhappy in marriages are talking about it. They're saying we're unhappy. Feminism is equally sort of a struggle for men to have better and easier lives. For men not to have to bear the burden of masculinity.
Swara, what does feminism mean to you?
I think feminism to me is a belief system and an ideology that believes that not just that men and women are equal, but it believes and recognizes that women have been treated unequally for centuries and for thousands of years in law, in culture, in religion, in society, in our mentality. And therefore, the effort to make them equal has to also be, that effort also has to be fought in all these areas. So it's not enough to just be like, oh, I believe in equality, but then not do a shit about it in law, in, culture, in institutions and so on. So I think that ultimately that's what feminism is, and it's about equality of men and women. It's about giving men and women the choice to live their lives without overwhelmingly being determined by the gender that you are born into. And therefore, for me, feminism is equally sort of a struggle for men to have better and easier lives. For men not to have to bear the burden of masculinity. And I read this somewhere that feminism has fought no wars. Feminism has fought for equal pay, for better working hours, for maternity leave, for schools, for hospitals, for better lives for men and women. So when people say, I'm not a feminist, my question is, why not? And that's really what I feel about it.
Right. People say that film should portray this, film should portray that. Are we ethically responsible for showing anything, or are we not?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I sometimes feel confused about this myself because, as I said, I don't believe that art should bear the burden of any kind of agenda other than the agenda of the story. But I also feel that, that you can't be blind and you can't be deaf to the context in which you are making films. And of course, and that was really the seed of why I wrote that open letter, on Padmaavat.
Yeah.
So I do feel that, you can't pretend, you can't be tone deaf to your context, okay? I feel that that's, and especially when you are making films where you want people to take you seriously, okay? I mean, I understand that, films that are completely formulae and stupid and, that they're like, oh, we're just, leave your brains at home and come. I mean, frankly, I don't know even about those films. Like, what does that mean?
How
leave
can
your
you
brains
physically?
and, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I think that you have to at least be aware of your context, I think that responsibility does lie upon us. And then once you've made a film, then be open to criticism. If you had this very cavalier attitude being like, oh, we'll make whatever we want, well then, then have that same cavalier attitude to when you get criticized for it. Because I know that a lot of filmmakers get very upset when their films are criticized for, for example, very regressive representation of women or a regressive representation of, Indian Bollywood is notorious for how we represent tribals and Africans and, racist kind of representation. Then don't be like, oh, well, you know what, like choose.
Right.
You wanna be irresponsible,
Right.
then you be ready to face the criticism for it. And that's really what I feel. And I know that sometimes it kind of happens unconsciously. And I know this because of my involvement in Raanjhanaa. And I know that the team of Raanjhanaa had no intention whatsoever of glorifying stalking, because that was not where it was coming from. And I think that Himanshu, even when he was writing it, it never struck him that the film would seem like it was glorifying stalking. When we were performing those scenes, we never thought, I remember how those scenes with Dhanush and Zishan got played out of, webbing the eyes, always fighting with Kundan and Murari.
Right.
And so many people came out of that and said, why are they constantly hitting you? And we never it never crossed our mind
Yeah.
that we're making a certain kind of violence against a female seem innocent and sweet.
Sure.
And that is something now that we should think about, you know. It's
Right.
not, we can't be like, oh, you didn't get the money. No, I mean, and I think that now, and even though, as I said, that I think that I've changed, my own thoughts have changed about Raanjhanaa, because I feel now that, you know, yeah, it is important to kind of be a little bit conscious, because especially in the context, you know, while we were shooting Raanjhanaa, Nirbhaya Case had happened. I remember this so vividly. We were in Banaras when that had happened, and the film released in June, I think. And in those 6 months, discourse in India had changed because of the Nirbhaya case. Suddenly, we'd all become more sensitive to gender and to representation of gender and so on. So I think that a lot of the criticism Raanjhanaa received was also that, because now suddenly we were more aware as a society.
Yeah.
So I think that constant interaction is important. But I do believe that, you know, ultimately films reflect what larger society is thinking.
So, Swara, why is it that people are so uncomfortable with women expressing themselves on screen? You, of course, have had a very controversial scene, which the whole world has talked about multiple times in Veere Di Wedding. Why? What is it? Why are we still uncomfortable with women expressing themselves?
I mean, I can speak for India and South Asia, because I feel that, like, there's a lot of similarity with us. I think that we come from societies where there's a culture of silence around female desire. And it's something that nobody, no one person, no one ethnic group, no one race, no one religion is responsible for. It's something that permeates our culture in a very collective sense. And it's been there for centuries, you know, and even when desire has been expressed, it's been in these very roundabout ways, and, you know, abstraction, symbolism. So people are, yeah, I mean, it's classic textbook patriarchy, right? That you are, that female desire being expressed is a sign that women are becoming independent and they're becoming less afraid, less silent. That makes you uncomfortable, because then you can't have a group that you're trying to dominate over and afford for them to be very noisy and, you know, be very conscious of their rights. A lot of people, you know, in India rue the fact that, oh, you know, feminism has led to higher divorce rates. Well, the only difference is that women who are now unhappy in marriages are talking about it. You know, they're saying we're unhappy.
Sure.
I mean, I think if we ask our grandmothers and their grandmothers and their grandmothers, nobody asked them, are you happy or unhappy? It was just given.
Yeah.
They didn't have a choice.
Right.
So I think that it's that tumult, you know, which comes with any society that's changing, and that's what we're seeing.
I asked the Director General of the prison for permission to practice on other rapists, because I know it sounds perverse, but I was so sure that I would physically assault one of the Nirbhaya rapists. We don't teach these utterly critical competencies and skills without which our children will grow up to rape, will grow up to be violent or bully or commit suicide or become depressed. Because it's not enough to just think of her as Nirbhaya, as a statistic on a heap of statistics. She would have done so many extraordinary things for India.